This is Dr. Jerome Corsi today with Monday. It's September 23rd, 2024. Thank you for joining us on thetruthcentral.com. I'm on X at Corsi Jerome 1 and on Substack at Substack is Jerome Corsi PhD.substack.com. And we're doing podcasts every weekday here at thetruthcentral.com. God's Five Stones, please visit it. You can see we've had a lot of new content on God's Five Stones. We filed last week that Ohio has an algorithm in its state voter database, and the algorithm is one that Andrew Paquette identified. We published it. There are articles on it on godsfivestones.com. The QR will take you directly to the site. You can donate. Donations are greatly appreciated. And we're doing everything we can. This week, we'll be announcing several other states. We have found already, you can see on the website, go to the state voter rolls. We've found Ohio and New York also has algorithms in it. The article from Andrew Paquette on New York is published in a peer-reviewed journal. So it has already undergone some degree of scrutiny and been found to be at least valid enough to publish. Oklahoma, I believe we'll be able to identify an algorithm there. Oklahoma, I was in Oklahoma and visited watched the Tulsa mayoral election, which I think was again another Democratic steal. The Democrats aren't done stealing elections. I think the Democrats are actually done with elections. I don't think they're too much of a nuisance for the Democrats. They want to have a Stalinist approach to the elections. It's not a matter of who casts the votes, it's who counts the votes that count. That's, I think, where they are entirely. And I don't think they're making much of a secret of it. The other states that we're looking at, we're going to be able to talk about Wisconsin, we're going to talk about Pennsylvania, we're taking a look at Colorado, Arizona, Texas, and we're finding algorithms everywhere pretty much these days. I think Andrew Paquette's gotten better at it. His analysis is sharper, and we're seeing that this is going to be something we can report on for throughout the rest of the time until the election. Nothing could be more important. What these algorithms mean is essentially, and I'll publish this in my Substack today, it's the ability to create non-existent voters and then to put them into the database, hiding it. It's like a card hiding scheme where you mark the cards and you might put the marked cards back into the deck so only you can find them. And then these are false records. They're not existing voters, but the records look good. They look like they're real voters, and therefore whoever's running the scheme can pick these voters out of the deck and vote them as mail-in ballots. And because the scheme gets the false, non-existent voter to get a legitimate state ID for that voter, then when the mail-in ballot comes in, all they have to do is see that the outside envelope has the same number on it, and that's a valid, certifiable vote for Kamala Harris, even though the voter doesn't exist. So the whole scheme of the Democrats has been all along, and I think we're finally beginning to figure it out, is to get non-existent voters registered, or at least to get control over votes, so that I think the scheme for vote harvesting, which had been used, where the Democrats go out and try to get signatures with people giving them to register them to vote, but that signature also allows the Democrats to make sure they get a hold of the mail-in ballots and can mail them in for the person. That's another part of this whole mail-in ballot scheme, and it's elaborate. And again, the Democrats don't care if they're lying or cheating or stealing to win elections. It took a massive amount of brilliance on Andrew Paquette's part to be able to recognize these schemes and to decipher them. And it's hard for people to believe that we could have had, I think, intelligence agents penetrate into our state board of elections to gain control of the mainframe computer systems on which the voter registrations reside, and then to alter that, to go in there and add in fake registrations by creating a mathematical code into the voter registration database that allows them to manipulate the data to pose false clones or false ghost voters into the voter registration database that look real. They're not counting, these cheaters are not counting on using the registrations from people who've left the state or people who've died. I mean, those are also problems in the state registration databases pretty much across the country. They've created their own false voters, which only they know exist as such. And they're able to vote those voters. That's what makes this scheme so nefarious. And it threatens our entire voting system, because if these mail-in ballots can be harvested, send workers out into a community, and they get as many signatures as they can, now they control those votes. Or, you know, and the states, the big difficulty is the states do not go out and do any kind of forensic surveying. States don't send people out into the communities to find out that these mail-in votes are real, or that the people are real, or they're registered at the locations they say they are, or that they have a right to vote. So it's not just the idea of getting the population of the United States to change by bringing in these millions of immigrants across the border and then depositing them in strategic places that will turn states blue. The Democrats are understanding that population is politics, and they think that the massive influx from south of the border is going to be Democratic, because the Democrats are going to give them goodies. They're going to give them cell phones. They're going to give them credit cards. They're going to put them up in hotels. They're going to make sure they're fed for a while until the Democrats have bought what they want, which is control. Then these people are disposable, because the Democrats have no feeling of inherent value to these people. It's simply a matter of controlling them. So I want you to take a look at God's 5 stones. That, for those who are listening, this is an audio podcast. It's G-O-D, no apostrophe S. 5, you spell out 5, F-I-V-E. Stones, S-T-O-N-E-S, it's plural, gods5stones.com. That's our 501c3, our tax-deductible foundation. Take a look at it. I think you're going to find a lot there of value. Chris, you want to comment on this before we move on? I want to cover a couple more topics. I want to cover the Middle East, and I want to cover what's happening in the economic crisis.
Oh, yeah. So those are big topics as well. But keeping an eye, you're saying that more states, not just the ones you've mentioned already, have these algorithms. It's funny because again the controversy over Tulsa, Oklahoma, the media's already run defense on these algorithms over there. There was an article saying there was an article there kind of decrying your presence.
That's right.
Was it last week or the week before?
Last
One
week,
of the
then
local papers. That's right. Yeah.
And then they also reported it to the Department of Justice, so the Department of Justice could put out another warning about election interference.
Well, I always say everybody's a conspiracy theorist and they're harmless until they're onto something. And then all of a sudden they become dangerous and they shouldn't be here nosing into anything. And I think this proves you and Andrew and Dr. Graves, you're all onto something. And all this should be heated right here on gods5stones.com.
We're onto something for sure. I mean, these algorithms are mathematically present. If you take the time to read the articles and study it, you're going to see that what they do is that they change the natural order of voter registration. So your voter ID is not a function of when you register. They rearrange it. And then in rearranging it, they can insert records in between the natural order, because they spread it out. So by these mathematical formulas, you register number 1, but number 2 is pushed down 1,111 into the pile. Number 3 is pushed down 1,111 in the pile for number 2. So they separate them. And in there, they can insert fake records or records from other part of the data. It's a very complicated scheme. And the reason I think it's intelligence agency grade is it would take a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of computer sophistication to make this work. It's not easy because you've got to have all the numbers filled in on the voter registration file, even though you're proceeding to first separate them and then go back and fill in gaps. That's a complicated mathematical program to write. You know, it's got to be recursive. It's got to have a method to it, and it has to be able to be not only created but also understood at the other end. So whoever is going to then ultimately vote these false voters as mail-in votes has to be able to find them. And that's editor's report in Ohio. You can see how detailed this is and how much we've done on this to prove that it exists. Now, a lot of this is going to be beyond the mathematical ability of people to read. And those who created the system are also counting on that. They want it to be difficult to understand, because then you're going to say, oh, it couldn't possibly exist. Nothing this complex could be put into our voter data system. Well, why not? I mean, intelligence agencies have massive capabilities. National Security Agency is probably taping every conversation in the United States that occurs electronically. Chris?
Well, on a smaller level here, when it comes to explaining to the people of America what's happening, this cannot be done in a 1.5 minute news package that you'll see on television, or even a short, we'll give you 22 minutes, we'll give you the world snippets on news talk radio, or news radio, if you will. People, when they read or hear the headline, it's going to be their prejudices either way. Nobody's going to be able to understand or want to get involved in this. Journalists certainly aren't going to do this. Even if they do a story on this, they're going to try to they're going to try to skew it like it's crazy and use the simplest explanation possible. Explaining this, though, again, trying to sell vegetables, if you will, trying to tell people this is really going on, explaining that there are complex mathematics, complex coding going on, is, well, beyond the attention spans of a lot of people here, and they're going to just dismiss it if they can't understand it in a 90-second package. And I believe the powers that put this together, like you're saying, made it complicated for that reason as well.
Yeah, they did. And they knew that it would be not believed when it was found.
Right.
First of all, they didn't expect it to be found. Then they knew it wouldn't be believed if it was found. Then they would deny it. They would say there's other reasons why this code exists. Well, there's no other reason. It first of all, does not make the voter database easier to understand. It's more complicated. You're putting in secret information in the database. That's inherently wrong. It's inherently a crime. It takes all of this to sort it out and to see how it's systematically done. And by the way, it's not applied in all counties. So only 3 counties in Ohio had algorithms in it. Cuyahoga County, they did massive vote harvesting, going out and getting people to give them their votes, sign forms, give them their signature, and then they go in and register the vote. But that person controls the vote. And they get hundreds of votes. They pay people to go out there and get 5,000-6,000 votes. And you can do this in a few days, just knocking on doors, going to nursing homes, going to shelters, going anywhere you want to go. Do the homeless. You do all kinds of people who are never going to show up to vote. Chris?
Exactly. And it's funny because you have people that also will vote for their families. You have those mail-in ballots go to the entire family there, whether the kids are living there or not. And do you remember on The View, Sunny Hostin, one of the hosts, I know on the simplest level, this happened. She said,
Yes.
well, I sent in a vote for my son too. And
Yeah.
and that was what was it, a Biden vote? No, it was a Biden vote. Yeah. That's technically that's illegal. But if you're a lefty, it's okay. If you're a Democrat, it's okay. You can do that. Or if it's vote harvesting, well, it's okay if you do that. But if you're a Republican and you're accused of that, like what happened in the Ninth District of North Carolina some years ago, I don't remember, it was 2016 or 2018, then, oh, well, hell breaks loose. Don't muscle in on our territory. That's what we have Stacey Abrams and the like for.
Yeah, I mean, the Democrats cheat, lie, and steal, and the newspapers that everybody, the media, this broadcast media, which is nothing more than CIA. The CIA has learned disinformation techniques. They accuse us of disinformation. We're trying to tell the truth. They are experts at disinformation. And when it's broadcast over the mainstream media, you first hear it in CNN, and then it propagates itself to, the next one of their channels or the next one of their channels. That's echo chambered throughout. And pretty soon you're reading the same thing coming up on X. You're reading the same thing on the New York Times. They are all repeating the same story. Russia collusion, Russia collusion, Russia collusion, Russia collusion, even though it's all a lie. Okay, let's shift gears because I want to talk about a couple of other topics. Israel over the weekend has launched some massive strikes on in Lebanon against Hezbollah. Now, these strikes looked massive. I mean, they were not nuclear weapons; they were just massive bombs, massive conventional weapons. I mean, you can tell the difference in nuclear weapons are detected immediately and reported right away around the world. There's an undeniable signature electronically to a nuclear explosion. But the point is that in Lebanon, evidently Israel has detected that the Hezbollah, which controls Lebanon, was getting ready to strike Israel the same way Hamas struck Israel. And Israel's not in a point of putting up with it any longer. For Israel, this is an existential contest. And Israel understands that the primary thing that Israel has to do is survive. Okay, so when Israel launches strikes against Hezbollah, it's trying to deter or make more difficult a strike against Israel. Now, what the Hezbollah does is it puts a lot of these weapons in the homes of civilians, just as we found that Hamas would be using hospitals and other shelters as shields to its operations. These terrorist organizations are fundamentally cowards, and they're happy to put the people at risk. So the government in Israel, in fact, was urging residents of southern Lebanon to get out of their homes and other buildings where Hezbollah stores the weapons, because the Jewish strike state is going to carry out, quote, extensive strikes against the terrorist groups. If you remember last week, Israel blew up the devices, these electronic devices, the cell phones, the pagers of the Hezbollah organization. So people carrying these around were either massively injured or killed. They did that with thousands of pagers blew up and cell phones. Again, that also debilitates the ability of Hezbollah to communicate. Not only is the blowing up their communication devices mean that they are going to be injured or killed, but their ability to communicate is then hampered. So this is, again, an escalation of the violence. So now we've got Israel systematically going through Gaza and continuing to go through Gaza. I think Israel will not quit until they get control of all the tunnels and destroy them. And there are massive tunnels under Gaza built over years by Hamas. And Hezbollah also has this network throughout Lebanon. Hezbollah and Hamas are both surrogate organizations for Iran. Iran is Shiite, but they're still supporting these Sunni organizations. And Hezbollah is kind of a combination. Hezbollah's leader was very close. The guy who created Hezbollah was very close to Khomeini, who was the moving force in the Iranian Revolution in 1979. A lot of this violence in the Middle East stems to the return of Ayatollah Khomeini back into Iran after he'd been in exile by the Shah of Iran. And Jimmy Carter welcomed Khomeini. The Democrats have been supporting Hamas. The Democrats have been do not support Israel. And the Democrats are expecting to get the Jewish vote in November, which to me is remarkable. But the question is whether or not we're ramping up to World War III. And the same is going on right now in Ukraine. In Ukraine, what we've got is the likelihood that the EU is going to approve Ukraine's military to use these long-range weapons, long-range missiles to hit into Russia. Now, if Ukraine starts bringing the war to Russia, Russia said they will consider the war to be a war with NATO, and Russia will not hesitate to retaliate. Putin said he could wipe Kiev off the face of the earth, and he could. That'd take him about 15 minutes. Push a few buttons, Kiev's gone. Now, if you want to tempt, the aggression in Ukraine is ours. This goes back to Hillary Clinton starting to work with the oligarchs, Pinochet and others in Ukraine, that go back to 2013 when she was Secretary of State. She was ending that. She still had her cell phones. She still had her private email server. She still had the Clinton Foundation out there to gain money from all these oligarchs. I wrote a book on it called Partners in Crime. The Clintons benefited economically, personally, from her position as Secretary of State. She was open for bribery through the Clinton Foundation. just as Joe Biden was open for bribery through his arrangements with Hunter Biden and his arrangements to gain access to money in Ukraine by doing favors for the oligarchs. The oligarchs wanted to get closer to the EU. They saw it as a better business opportunity working with the West, steal more money. And Israel, Israel has become, I think, a religious war, a war of extermination. The forces opposing Israel would like to see Israel destroyed. This is a war where NATO is wanting to push right to the border with Russia. And for some reason, the Democrats, the Atlantic Council, the State Department want to have war with Russia, which I cannot figure out. Makes no sense at all. These two provinces that Russia has occupied in Ukraine are largely Russian speaking. And Russia has to have access to the Black Sea, which is to access the Mediterranean, access to the Atlantic. So for all these reasons, this aggression to get Ukraine into NATO, and we have CIA bases, we have 35 CIA bases now recently disclosed along the border with Russia. We put a Wuhan-like laboratory on the border with Russia. I mean, how provocative can we get? And yet the American press doesn't report it this way. Reports it as Russian aggression. Putin is a madman. Putin wants to take over Europe. Well, Putin's shown no indication of that whatsoever. It's Europe that wants to harass Russia, and if so, we'll have a nuclear war. This could be the October surprise as the world breaks out in World War III. So we have to cancel the election in November because we have to have continuity of the government. Don't put any of this beyond the Democrats. The Democrats are a communist party today. They are not playing by the rules. They want to destroy the rules. And the Democrats don't realize that they're just the useful idiots. When the World Economic Forum takes over, the first people the World Economic Forum will get rid of are the woke, because they won't want any more trouble caused. None of these ideas work. Electric vehicles don't work. Climate change isn't happening. Okay, we could just go down the list. And the UN is meeting in New York this week, clogging up traffic in a massive traffic jam and voting to have all the UN organizations be supreme over everybody, trying to increase the power of the international organizations to the detriment of national sovereignty. We're in a very, very dangerous period of time right now, and none of this has to be happening. If we had a different government in the White House, if Trump were in the White House, Trump could solve these problems within a matter of hours. But no, we've got a military, got admirals in dresses. They're more interested about their transgender parades down Fifth Avenue. And by the way, I love this term transgender. They're not just transhuman, they're transgender, because they don't seem to think gender has anything to do with sex. The massive insanity here is overwhelming on the left, and yet it's being reported as normal. Chris, you want to comment on this before we transition?
Yes, you mentioned the UN is the big summit's coming here. It's actually the UN Summit of the Future. How about that? They're I love the way they try to market these things. Yes, they're causing real problems with New York City traffic, but that's where FDR put the UN. That's what happens here. But this is the UN Summit of the Future, which means they're going to be they're going to decide for us how they see the future for for the Western world. The third world will probably follow suit, but the idea is they need to get the Western nations in line. Great thing is, and this is where we need to be diligent with the next elections coming up, is that we as a Security Council nation or a permanent member have veto power over anything else that goes through there. So even if the UN wants to become a one world government, it is up to the voters to try to install an administration who who is against this new world order, who's against the World Economic Forum's ambitions, and say no to the UN when they're trying to pull crap on us like this.
Well, this is again the beginning of of an end game that involves taking stealing the 2024 election, and I'm not ruling out that there'll be an attempt to do that.
They need to do that. in order to keep the order they want. I mean, to be honest with you, they see Trump, they see the American people, and they see and frankly, they see farmers in the European Union. They see regular workers, regular people in the European Union standing up to them as threats and dangers to their foreseeable way of life and their Agenda 2030.
Well, the key here is that, okay, another part of this that I'm watching carefully is this P. Diddy thing. I mean, it looks like the Luciferians have decided to fight amongst each other. The Luciferians are all in the sexual camp here, P. Diddy, and I'm sure he's got enormous amounts of blackmail material. It
Right.
sounds like these sex parties he's had have been everywhere from, LeBron James through Obama, and it probably undoubtedly have sex pictures of Obama involved in all this too, and maybe Kamala. I mean, the going rumor is that Kamala and Obama might have been lovers at one point or another. Everybody wonders why he picked Kamala, why Obama's so determined to have Kamala in there. Well, it has to be some way or other he feels he's got control over her, or that she has control over him. And with this P. Diddy thing, you're going to find it's a mass of pedophilia, sexual perversion, probably satanic rituals. I mean, the whole thing is as evil as it gets. And this has been behind the scenes. This has been what Hollywood is. Okay, we're going to expose the Silicon Valley and Hollywood insanity pretty quickly now. Okay, so we're publishing books on it. I'm now an acquiring editor with Post Hill Press, and we can publish books. We can get authors together. We can publish books. The Anti-Globalist Manifesto, which is a banned book, it's a war room book, is out now, and I'm working strongly to see if we can't create the Anti-Globalist Alliance in the United States and in Europe. I need all the help we can get, and again, the website for that will be gods5stones.com. We'll be transitioning that once the election is covered from covering so much on trying to educate people on the voting. We're now going to shift pretty quickly to educating people more intensively on this anti-globalism. And I think this book, Anti-Globalism Manifesto, will become an international bestseller. All right, let's transition to the last topic I want to cover today, which is, I think, equally important. And that is gold right now is trading at $2,622, $2,622.80 per ounce. We started talking about this gold was at $1,900 an ounce. You would have made over $700 an ounce had you listened to us and taken the advice to go to Swiss America now and talk to them. Silver is at $30.78 an ounce. Silver is now broken the $30 an ounce barrier. These are important trading signals. If you take a look at our website, we have a lot on Swiss America, and I've kept it there because I want people to call and get this free book. Get this free book on how a coming global crash will create an historic gold rush. The toll-free number is 1-800-519-6268. 1-800-519-6268. And if you call that number now, we'll send you a copy of this free book. Dean Heskin and I wrote it together. And what the book does is it shows in detail how you've got to understand the dynamics here, that right now the stock market's at like 40,000, Dow Jones Industrial Average. Everybody said, well, isn't that great? Look at gold. I know gold's high, but I'm on the stock market. I've got mutual funds, my IRA, my 401k. If you'll listen to me now, you'll save yourself a massive heartache as soon as the election's over. Because either way the election goes, once it's over, the international economy is going to tank. Because this is the next crisis. You can imagine us being in a situation where we've got war in the Middle East, war in Europe, and possibly war with Taiwan, over Taiwan, China trying to take over Taiwan. So the world's at war. This is the beginning of World War III. And then we have that combined with a Great Depression, where people lose a third or a fourth of their money. People are surviving paycheck to paycheck with credit card debt through the roof. But this house of cards will collapse. People are not going back to work in the offices. So you've got commercial real estate that's in the process of refinancing, and somebody has to take the losses because these buildings are now going to be depreciated in value because they're not occupied. They're not earning what they earned. So you've got a lot of huge office space, and the cities are deteriorating. There's now roving mobs controlling our major cities. You've got, parts of the country, you've got these Venezuelan gangs taking over houses and properties. And the Democratic cities are incapable of doing anything. The Democrats are so corrupt, they're in business with these people. So you've got Springfield, Ohio, with an Antifa mayor bringing in from Haiti these refugees in Ohio. Well, but that's not going to do very much for Kamala in Ohio, but I think the election that they're after in Ohio is Sherwood Brown for Senate, because these algorithms can also be used in the down ballot elections to steal those as well. Okay, so I'm urging you, I'm pleading with you to call Swiss America. I'll put the number up one more time for those listening on audio. Talk to them. You've got the Walking Liberty Calf Dollar, 1-800-519-6268. Get up to 250 of these coins as a first-time introductory offer for virtually the price of what they're worth in silver. If you take a look at that or any of the free reports that are on here, free report about the secret war against cash. You fill out that form and it's emailed to you. So all you have to do is fill out the form. Swiss America's consultative selling. They will work with you on the consultative selling. And so therefore, you're going to find with Swiss America, you're going to get advice as to how to best reposition yourself for a crashing dollar. And if you don't believe me, there's nothing I can do if you won't listen. I mean, if you're in the stock market right now, take your gains. The worst that can happen is you can go back into the stock market slightly more expensive, but you won't have risked the loss. The loss this time is not going to be easily made up. Stock market crashing 25% is going to be another 1929. Over time, it will have repercussions, and it will set in a deep depression. And I know it's not good news, but when you know it in advance, there's things you can do to protect yourself. I'm urging and encouraging you to do that right now. Chris, any final comments before we wrap up for today?
I'm looking at the UN's website for their summit this week and their Pact for the Future. We've been taking a quick look at that. Maybe let's see what they're trying to pull on us. This is again part of their part of the way they're trying to push forward on Agenda 2030. And yes, I'm pretty sure it's also going to be a meeting to discuss how to best propagandize this to the citizens of each of these countries. So keep an eye on that. You can find it on the UN's website all over the place, and their Pact for the Future and everything else. Something to look at. While the Democrats are whining about this suggestion box from Heritage Foundation, it's Agenda 2030 and the UN's plans for the world's future. Maybe we should be more worried about.
The world's future controlled by them.
Right.
Where we're nothing more than slaves and serfs.
Yes.
We'll own nothing, but we'll be happy.
That's correct.
Communism 101, followed by totalitarianism 101.
That's what they want. Hey, what was that? France? Was it France? Their leftists who proposed us fly only 4 times a year.
Yes, that's right.
That's right. So
15-minute cities.
Yep. This is what they think. This is what they think of us. That they really
eat the bugs.
Yep. Yeah. That's exactly.
Have electric vehicles that don't work.
Useless eaters, if you will.
Well, in the end, God wins. God always wins. God will win here too. And to wrap up, and despite how dark this looks, my hope remains strong and solid. We are going to win this battle. God did not create the human race to fail. Did not create this experience of living in this earth to fail. Satan does not rule here. All these secret wars we're going to expose. And if you'll continue to follow us and support us, we're telling the truth here. I know we'll be squashed and censored, but we're going to continue doing it. And the word will get out. In the end, God always does succeed We're going to have a judgment of God. I don't think there's any way to avoid that right now. We've let too many babies die since Roe v. Wade. We've allowed God to be taken out of the schools going back to the 1940s. But in the final analysis, and I keep saying this in terms of my book on JFK, which showed that JFK was shot twice from the front, truth will out, and truth will win the day. And these demons will be sent back to hell, all with their confusion and their madness and their insanity. People eventually are going to say no. And the only way to resist this is to say no. We don't participate. Take the kids out of the schools. We're going to have a series of recommendations as things you can do to resist this. Take the kids out of the school. The public school system collapses. Let it collapse. It was completely evil to begin with. Unless you want your children taught about gender transformation and how they need to have sex change operations before they even go through puberty. This insanity will be stopped. It will pass. But in the passage, it's going to be painful. And I'm trying to prepare you for the pain to get through it the best way possible, which includes 2 Chronicles 7:14. Let's start by getting on our knees and asking God to forgive us for letting things get to this point. If we do that, God will hear our prayer and heal our land. This is Dr. Jerome Corsi. Thank you for joining us today on thetruthcentral.com. It's Monday. It's September 23rd, 2024. We will be back tomorrow and every weekday. God bless.